Hey guys, it's Sunday afternoon and I just want to do a quick video to talk to you right now a little bit about your routing and how you're going about deciding who you're going to see every day and the thought process behind that. I just got through reading this book. It's called Go for No. It's really short and it's by Richard Fenton. My son gave it to me. My son is 23 years old, and he also is in kind of like a direct marketing type of sales. And to be honest with you, when I first read this book, it kind of went against the grain a little bit for me because I had gone through some courses recently that talked about kind of how silly it is to kind of be looking for people to say no to you when you should be looking for as many yeses as possible. And the person I was listening to was just saying, it's kind of why go after a no when you should be going after a yes? And the concept behind this book is basically if you go through as many no's as possible, you're eventually going to hit a yes. But it really wasn't the maybe by chance I'll hit a yes. It's just that the number of no's you get through are just kind of a segue into getting a yes. I know that probably doesn't make sense. But anyway, it made me think about my routing, made me think about how I go into a Monday in particular and the kind of strategy I may use. And sometimes I'll just be honest with you, I could hit a Monday and know we're going to have our Monday call. Know I've got some things that are always on my calendar, but I could very easily get up and just not really have that much of a plan. And I know a lot of you know that basically not having a plan is actually planning to fail. And so I want to address kind of those two things. Lately, our corporation has done this top-down messaging to us that if we're not hitting our goals, if we're not hitting our budget or our PPG, then we need to increase the number of calls we make a day. And at first I was like, you know what, that's not the route I want to go. I want to do quality calls and try to do these as many quality calls as I can. And if I can get to 60, 65 calls a week, great. But if not, that's okay too. And what I'm learning is it really is a combination of both. That you need your quality calls, the ones that you're going to go into and really ask the good questions and spend the time and definitely build the relationships. But you also need to have as many calls as you can. And they don't always have to be the same people. One of the things I talked to one of you about this week is, we can get very comfortable going to the places that we know we're well received, that we're going to walk in and we know everybody in the office and we can talk to them and we could possibly get to the back and ask the question of, have you seen someone today that meets the criteria of home health and how can I help you with them, that kind of a thing. And those are great offices to go into. But what about those that you don't feel very confident going in? How do you approach that call? Are you nervous? Do you have a plan? Do you avoid it altogether? Do you go by and see the parking lot full and think, you know what, this is great, it's full, it's too busy, I really shouldn't go in there? Do you take folders by to offices, and in those offices that you can't get to the back, are you just walking in and asking them to get these folders signed and then leaving? And basically your call note for the day is you dropped off and picked up folders. I have to admit, I've been there. I've actually done that where I've walked in, I saw how crazy it was. I didn't make any attempt to talk with anybody, and I dropped off folders. I asked respectfully for folders for me to pick up for my office, and I left. And I even put in my call notes, dropped off and picked up folders. That's it. But this book here really challenged me today. It made me think about how many times that really successful people in life had failed. And a couple of the examples that they gave were people that we know. Of course, y'all know the story of Abraham Lincoln and how many times he failed at running for office before he finally became president of the United States. He's not as well known for his failures as he is for his successes. Other people I could name, athletes who they have just as many strikeouts as they do home runs. One of the stories I had never heard before was about the man who developed airbags and how he went decades with no one buying an airbag sensor. And when he finally sold them, he sold $120 million worth of sensors. This is a person who failed for decades. I mean, I could go on and on about the people. Thomas Edison, his story is one that, 10,000 times he had failed before getting it right. And just that there's a lot of people who experienced a lot of failure in their life who are very, very successful. So my question to you is, which person are you going to be? Are you going to be the type person who they're told no, that rejection, if you will, just kind of leads you to, I don't think I'm going to go back there again, and if I do, I'm just going to drop off folders and leave? Or are you the type person who can hear no multiple times? Now, this fella actually, it's all fictional, but he tells a story about this industry where the people were recognized not just for the sales that they made, but for the number of no's that they got. And at the end of the year, for 4 years in a row, the same people were on both lists. The people who were recognized and got trophies for their no quotient being really high were the same people who also were recognized for the best sales people of the year. And it does make sense statistically that the more calls you make, the more success you can have. So getting back to our routing, I guess, I would just challenge you to look at who is it that you're going to go in and see, and like really, really, really have a plan. I am changing that plan tonight. I'm sitting down looking at what my day looks like tomorrow. The other thing is for you to think about a time that you did go into a circumstance and you did fail, or you were rejected, or somebody did tell you no, and what happened on the other side of that. And I guess the point I'm going to make is you're still living, you're watching this video, you survived it. And so what's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing can happen is that you're told no and that you have to leave. But you did survive it. So I want to encourage you that maybe no isn't necessarily a really bad thing. And for us to really be challenged to make a difference with our schedule this week. I would also encourage you to look at big accounts. That was another thing he said, is that sometimes it's easy to go into those smaller offices that are easy to get into, but what about those big ones? And, the bigger the account, the more referrals could come out of it. So what are you doing to get in front of some big accounts? And have you identified those? And have you only tried one way to get in, like just seeing the doctor and his nurse? What about the office manager? What about the person at the front? How many people can you talk to? And how can you be strategic about getting in there? The last thing I think I just want to encourage you to do is to maybe make a list of how many people you're legitimately making calls, not the ones that you're just dropping stuff off, but just legitimately making calls, and see if you really are getting that 60, 65 a week. I think that there's very easy ways that we can skirt around that. And I'm really challenged this week not to skirt around it. I'm going to see how many places I can get in, how many conversations I can have. I'm going to expect no's, but be very excited when I get the yeses, and figure out how to maybe change my message to a way that I actually ask the question at the end, a legitimate close of, do you have anyone that meets this criteria that I've talked to you about today? Can you look for one person today? Do you have anyone that comes to mind? And if they say no, then just say, that's great, but hopefully you'll think about what I've talked to you about. Like if my message this week is going to be about falls. And I can say, can you think of anyone who has fallen? And if they say no, then that's what I'm looking for. Okay, you haven't seen anybody today? Well, I want you to look for someone. And let me know if you look for, I'm going to ask you next time I come in, have you seen someone that meets that criteria? So I don't know, I kind of liked this book, Go for No. And being in love with no is not necessarily a bad thing. I think you'll definitely find those people who are very successful are the ones who have a high no ratio. So for what it's worth, hopefully this will encourage you to get out there, make a difference, and don't settle. The last thing I'm gonna leave on is one of the things he talked about is that when we are close to meeting budget, a lot of times what people will do is that they'll just stop. They'll reward themselves for meeting their PPG and kind of moving on. But this month in particular, we're being encouraged to go beyond our budget. And if we go beyond our budget by a certain amount, we're going to be compensated, pretty nicely right before Christmas. So what a perfect month. You've got 2 weeks left to really implement this strategy, to really get after it, to really figure out how to get in front of as many people as possible, ask as many people as possible if they have someone who is a good home health candidate, and then be compensated for it at the end of the month. So what I was going to say is if you could make a list, I'm going to do this, I'll let y'all know how it turns out, a list of how many people you get in front of, how many say no, and then see if you've increased that number, did you actually increase the number of referrals you got this month? I guarantee you that that those two numbers, the no quotient and your yes quotient, are going to be neck and neck. It just makes sense to me. So good luck this week. If you have any questions, give me a call. And I can't wait to hear the results of your no quotient and yes quotients.